There's something hauntingly beautiful about abandoned places frozen in time. Once vibrant cities reduced to empty streets, buildings left to crumble and decay. These ghost towns offer an eerie glimpse into lives interrupted and history stopped in its tracks. What happened to force entire towns and cities to be left behind long ago? War, disaster, economic collapse? On this episode of Globe Trekking, we'll explore the histories of the world's most compelling abandoned cities, tragic tales of people and communities lost to time. We'll count down the top 10 most fascinating ghost towns, stunning ruins once teeming with life, now empty shells indifferent to the memories they hold. Hit subscribe and join us as we journey to these surreal landscapes where milestones mark disasters past, where abandoned homes remind us nothing lasts forever. This is the top 10 abandoned cities frozen in time. Number 10, Pyramiden, Norway. Our list starts with the cold, far-flung reaches of the Arctic. Pyramiden was a thriving Soviet coal mining town, but once the mines were depleted, this settlement on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard was left to ruin. Founded in 1910 at the foot of a glacier, Pyramiden was sold to Russia in 1927 and mined continuously until 1998. At its peak, Pyramiden had over 1,000 residents, a cultural center, pool, gym, and more, amenities that made it an improbable Arctic oasis. But after a deadly plane crash in 1996 took 141 lives, the weakened Russian economy could no longer justify maintaining remote Pyramiden. Its residents abandoned the town, boarding the last boat out in 1998. Today, it remains largely deserted, only a handful of inhabitants in town. Arctic foxes roam snowy streets once walked by miners. Apartment blocks stand empty, windows shattered by the elements. Visitors come in summer to marvel at the beautifully preserved relic of a not-so-distant but very different past. Pyramiden serves as a haunting reminder. Even here, in the planet's most inhospitable terrain, humans will build great cities, and those cities too, like all things, will one day end. Number 9, Belchite, Spain. The next stop on our tour through time brings us to Belchite, a small town in Spain's northeast, destroyed during the Spanish Civil War. In 1937, Republican and nationalist forces waged a bloody month-long battle over Belchite, leaving the town in ruins. After the nationalists won, the ruins of Belchite were left untouched, a memorial to those who fought and died. Today, walking Belchite streets, you find rubble and collapsed buildings, much as they were in 1937 after artillery fire and aerial bombardments ravaged the town. Destitute houses stand amidst overgrown vegetation. Belchite's ruins speak to the longevity of war's scars on a landscape. The town's bell tower bears artillery damage from 80 years ago. Visitors say exploring Belchite transports them back to the devastating war that tore the nation apart. While the rest of Spain rebuilt and recovered, Belchite was left untouched, its crumbling buildings forever marking the violence and suffering endured here. Belchite teaches an ominous lesson. The horrors of war persist in the lifeless streets and shattered structures left behind. Number 8. Wareham Percy, England. In England, plagues and economic turbulence rendered Wareham Percy uninhabited long ago. Found nestled in the Yorkshire Wolds, Wareham Percy grew over 6 centuries into a thriving medieval village of prominent stone buildings. But the Black Death, which decimated populations across Europe, never reached Wareham Percy. Instead, the Hilton family who took ownership evicted villagers in the 16th century to convert the land for sheep farming, leading to the settlement's abrupt abandonment. Today, Wareham Percy contains the ruins of an impressive medieval church, manor houses, and peasants' stone cottages. Archaeologists excavating the churchyard made macabre discoveries, hacked up bones dating back centuries bearing knife marks, evidence of bodies burnt and broken after death. Visitors describe Warham Percy as an amazing opportunity to step into rural life in medieval England. While eerie and isolated, this peek into the past tells a story of early English country life. Number 7. Kolmanskop, Namibia. Half buried by sand, Kolmanskop in southern Namibia provides a striking scene. This former diamond mining town once boasted a stately array of German colonial buildings rising improbably from the Namib Desert. Founded in 1908 after rich diamond deposits were found, Kolmanskop became a bustling hub, housing over 1,300 people at its peak in the 1920s. The town boasted a school, hospital, ballroom, theater, and more. But when diamond production declined after World War I, residents began leaving Kolmanskop in droves. By 1956, the last inhabitants abandoned the town to the desert sands. Today, Kolmanskop's decrepit buildings are slowly succumbing to the dunes that have invaded the town, providing photographers an evocative subject. While hauntingly photogenic, what happened here represents the darker underbelly of colonial Africa. Kolmanskop relied on exploited indigenous labor from surrounding areas, and when the profitable diamonds dried up, the colonists simply packed up and left, disregarding the lives and land they disrupted. Kolmanskop stands as an eerie monument to both the hubris and transience of empire. 6. Body, California. On the other side of the world, in California's Sierra Nevada mountains, lies Body, once a thriving Wild West boomtown. This lucrative mining settlement sprung to life after gold was discovered in 1859. Body's populace climbed to a peak of 10,000 people by 1880, sporting some 65 saloons at its prime. Alongside miners, the town attracted business owners, prostitutes, and outlaws, all seeking their fortune from the gold rush. Body became renowned for its prosperity, but also its pervading violence and lawlessness. Killings and street shootouts were frequent, and bodies were buried on the edge of town. Alongside the mines, Body contained opium dens, brothels, and gambling halls catering to its rough clientele. With the gold depleted, Body's population dwindled, and the town was eventually abandoned by 1942. Today, over 170 buildings remain, preserved in a state of arrested decay. Peering through windows into empty clapboard houses, saloons, and churches, visitors can vividly imagine Body's wild past, when gold spawned a thriving yet anarchic boomtown. Number 5. Krakow, Italy. In the Basilicata region of Italy, the medieval hilltop town of Krakow has been left a dramatic wreck teetering atop a steep mountainside. Originally constructed in the 8th century, Krakow survived through the centuries despite the volatile nature of medieval Italy. At its 16th century peak, Krakow boasted over 2,500 residents and a thriving urban community. But by the mid-20th century, poor sewage and water systems had destabilized the rocky cliffs underlying the town. Catastrophic landslides in 1963 forced all 1,800 remaining inhabitants to abruptly abandon Krakow. Over 50 years later, Krakow remains completely uninhabited and in a state of ruin. Exploring Krakow's ruined buildings and empty streets, one can hardly imagine this crumbling ghost town was once a buzzing epicenter of medieval life until the earth reclaimed it. Number 4. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. Another town destroyed in World War II, this time by Nazi forces. Oradour-sur-Glane stands frozen in time as a memorial to those slain. On June 10, 1944, troops marched into the peaceful French village of Oradour-sur-Glane and massacred nearly all its inhabitants. Soldiers corralled women and children into a church before setting it ablaze, killing those inside. Meanwhile, men were tortured and executed. 642 villagers murdered in total. After this atrocity, General Charles de Gaulle ordered the town remain untouched, exactly as the Nazis left it. Today, burned-out buildings and car wrecks still litter Oradour-sur-Glane's streets, while untouched belongings remain in homes. Clocks stopped at the precise time the massacre began. a stained glass window portraying Christ hangs miraculously intact amidst the village church's charred ruins. Here, time stands still, preserving evidence of unimaginable horrors. Visitors say Oradour-sur-Glane represents a profound warning. We must never forget. Number 3. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Beneath the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a hidden fire has been burning ceaselessly since 1962, reducing this former mining community of over 1,000 to smoldering ash and toxic fumes. The fire ignited when an attempt to clean up the town dump went disastrously wrong, setting the labyrinth of coal mines beneath Centralia ablaze. The subterranean inferno releasing carbon monoxide and opening sinkholes across town, swallowing people, pets, and vehicles. By 1984, the government offered residents buyouts to leave the uninhabitable settlement. Nearly all accepted. Only around 10 stubborn holdouts remain today in Centralia. Venturing through the overgrown, empty streets, you'll find curbs that still melt in the summer and a graveyard where steam wisps from the cooked earth. Experts believe the fire could burn for another 250 years, making resettlement impossible. Centralia teaches us that our tampering with nature can unleash consequences of generational proportions, leaving only ghost towns in its wake. Number 2. Varosha, Cyprus. On the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, Varosha was once a glamorous beach resort, a playground for the rich and famous. But after the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974, this thriving coastal town, described as the French Riviera of Cyprus, was suddenly abandoned overnight, becoming a forbidden ghost city. Prior to the invasion, Varosha boasted high-rises, luxury hotels, and restaurants lining sandy white beaches. Tourists flocked here by the hundreds of thousands each year. But when Turkey seized the area, citizens fled, leaving behind seaside mansions and posh businesses. Today, Varosha's crumbling abandoned buildings face the sea behind barbed wire, entry forbidden by the Turkish military. While ostensibly Turkish-controlled northern Cyprus recently announced intentions to re-inhabit Varosha, proposals face fierce opposition. Greek Cypriots decry resettlement plans, demanding this former tourist haven, left untouched since 1974, be returned to its original inhabitants. But with negotiations stalled, Varosha remains frozen in time, a postcard from the resort's glamorous past on a now bitterly contested land. Number 1. Pripyat, Ukraine. Of all the ghost cities on our list, none carry as tragic a past as Pripyat, Ukraine. This model Soviet town, founded in 1970, was built to house workers at the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. By the mid-1980s, Pripyat boasted nearly 50,000 residents and an array of state-of-the-art amenities from gyms and pools to schools and factories. But in 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear plant exploded in one of the worst disasters in history. Radiation flooded Pripyat, forcing the entire population to evacuate. Told by authorities they'd be back in 3 days, they never returned. Today, Pripyat remains a radioactive ghost town, too dangerous to resettle. Nature has reclaimed empty buildings and streets where Soviet citizens lived and worked just over 30 years ago. Gas masks litter the floor of a school gymnasium evacuated in the middle of class. The iconic Ferris wheel and fairground still stand, prepared for a May Day celebration that never came. Pripyat was a shining example of a modern Soviet utopia until a human-caused catastrophe reduced it overnight into a nuclear wasteland, a disturbing relic of an era when mankind believed we had conquered the atom. But some things cannot be tamed. Pripyat stands as a chilling reminder that our faith in technology is often tragically misplaced. Well, there you have it, the 10 most fascinating yet haunting abandoned cities on Earth. Tragic stories of people, communities, and sometimes entire civilizations wiped from existence. From centuries-old medieval villages to modern nuclear disaster sites, The reasons these places were left behind vary, but they universally provoke reflection on the impermanence of even our greatest human achievements. Want to explore more surreal and mysterious abandoned sites? Click subscribe, then click on the video popping up now for our tour through the 10 creepiest abandoned theme parks on Earth. Now those places look more post-apocalyptic than Disneyland. Let us know your thoughts on these surreal ghost cities in the comments, and thanks for watching Globe Trekking.